Stevens, and I'm here today with Jeanine Niemoller, and we're going to talk about her amazing career here as a Wyoming nurse. And this is Olive. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for asking me to participate. I'm honored.
So let's start off by talking about who you are and what's your current status in nursing.
Okay, I'm currently working with the Wyoming Center for Nursing. I had a nice long career and did clinical nursing, but I'm currently working as the grant coordinator for the Wyoming Center for Nursing. And that organization was developed and founded at the University of Wyoming, but when Mary Berman left her position, she encouraged us to become freestanding in a 501(c)(3).
Yep.
And so we did that and have tried to build that organization up as a not-for-profit. And hopefully, what I often say is, my goal is that before I die, we will have this organization founded and substantial in the state of Wyoming.
Well, you're doing pretty good so far because you all put on a lot of events.
And we do.
Just saw another one on Facebook.
Yes, we're doing good things.
So tell me about your background before you became a nurse.
Okay, I was born and reared in Sidney, Nebraska.
Oh.
My husband and I moved here after my first educational event. I graduated from high school in Sidney. My husband and I met when I was a senior in high school, and I had already planned to become a nurse at that point. My mother, when I was a young girl, was diagnosed with a brain tumor and had open brain surgery back in the late 50s, and was then paralyzed and had a very difficult time. Was in the hospital for 3.5 months, I think. And so that's when I decided I was going to become a nurse. And so I never had to question, what are you going to do when you grow up? I just was going to be a nurse, and that's how it's happened.
So you graduated from high school in Sidney.
I did.
Did you get married soon after high school?
Well, let me tell you that story. It's amusing. I went to Denver and was going to, in fact, I was enrolled in and started classroom work at St. Luke's Hospital School of Nursing in a diploma program.
Okay.
And
down in Denver.
Down in Denver.
Yeah.
And during that period of time, nursing, especially hospital nursing, was very intense. And I suddenly realized that I could not function without my husband to be. We weren't married yet, but decided we were going to get married, and they wouldn't allow you to be married in school in those days. So I, after lots of thinking and lots of planning, I decided to leave school and get married. And so Bob and I were married in Sidney, and then I was not in school. We moved here to Laramie.
Okay.
We had 2 children, and I was a stay-at-home mom for 4 years. And then I went to work as an office, I guess they'd call it a physician's office person. You know, I didn't have a license at that point. I worked as a CNA. Started the day I was 16 as a CNA in the hospital, so I had some experience. So I was hired by Dr. Bill Bennett and Dr. Gene Coates and worked in their office for 12 years while I was going to school at the University of Wyoming. I started to work in '69, I think, and by 1972, the doctor I worked for, Jean Coates, said to me one day, she said, "Jeannie, you need to go back to school. You're wasting your youth here. You need to go to school. And so her and I walked across. She had an office at 13th and Grand here in Laramie, and we were less than 2 blocks from the School of Nursing at that point, which is in the Cheney building, you know. That's where we were, in the basement of the Cheney building.
Yes.
The School of Nursing was at that point. Anyway, she took me over, introduced me to Dorothy Tupper, who was the dean at that point, and I started on my process of my education. You know, Dorothy Tupper used to laugh and say we worked together for a long time, and I adored her. But she said that I was the longest single advisee she ever had, because it took me 9 years. Because I was working full time and had 2 small children, it took me 9 years to get my bachelor's degree. So I didn't graduate until 1981 as a nurse.
So you first approached UW in 1972 then?
Correct.
And you had already been a CNA in Nebraska.
Correct.
And you had also been a candy striper.
Yes. Well, in those days, they didn't, where I worked, they didn't call them candy stripers. They were nursing assistants, is what they called them.
Okay.
And so I started with that, and I've got my pin from when I was a NA, and it's there. And then I moved through that program, went into the St. Luke's Hospital School of Nursing, stopped there, and then started at the University of Wyoming in the 70s, and graduated in 81.
So let's talk a little bit about the early days then. So I see a whole collection of delightful. I'm not even sure I've kept all my stuff. I'm really impressed.
I didn't realize I had, but I'm kind of a, you know, I don't know, a hoarder, I guess, of those kinds of things. Each of those jobs were important to me, and every job I've ever had was the new one has always been better than the one before. I've been so fortunate, and I don't think everybody can say that, but I truly can say that I learned many things in all of those positions, and I'm not finished learning yet.
No, I think you've got another 20, maybe 30 years.
I don't know. I don't know. It's been a long one.
So, is there anything that you wanted to particularly show about these early years? I see a Miss Thies.
Was
that your?
That was my maiden name when I started back in Sidney, Nebraska, and then I became Mrs. Niemoller and still worked as a nursing assistant in the hospital there. When we moved here to Laramie, I took a little hiatus and raised my babies, and then when my youngest was 4 years old, was when I went to work and started my career at the University of Wyoming.
So you go to school at UW, and you go in under Dorothy Tupper. Was she the dean the entire time that you were at UW?
Oh, heavens, no. And the curriculum changed a dozen times. Well, because I was in school 9 years, every time I turned around, they changed the curriculum.
Yes.
And so I often had difficulty redoing classes. In those days, you couldn't test out. You had to go through the school. We had we had many instructors that felt that I could have done that many times, but because of the rules and the regulations, I would get involved in a new curriculum. And part of the reason it took me 9 years is because I often had to repeat some things because it took a long time. In those days, there was no urgency to finish in 4 years. I started in summer school, did my basics, you know, my anatomy and physiology and those kinds of things. One class at a time, some on evenings, some semesters I only took, you know, a 4-hour class. I started with my nursing clinical classes probably in 78 or 9 probably. And then I went part-time at the doctor's office where I was working, and became more of a student. I can remember one of the amusing things that I remember from that time was that, first of all, I was older because I had a family, and so I was what they called Dorothy Tupper always called me a non-generic student. And that upset the students that were generic students because they thought that meant ordinary. And that they misinterpreted the word generic, meaning starting at the beginning. And so I often, anytime I hear the word generic, I always giggle because I can remember there was an outcry of young, 20-some-year-old nurses saying, well, what do you mean I'm a generic student? I'm not an ordinary student. I giggle when I think about that. But anyway, that's when I started. I remember the classroom work being challenging because I often had to walk from my place of employment over to the school and back multiple times a day to get my classes in. And we had sessions over, where the parking garage is at the university. That was the hospital in the beginning. When I had my babies, at Ivinson Hospital, which was torn down and the parking garage was built.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
So I often went across to the hospital. It had been relocated up to where the hospital is now. And we would have our post-clinical meetings and our post-classroom, exam things there. And I can remember there wasn't a lot of furniture in that building at that point in time. And I can remember and Dorothy Tupper sitting on the floor doing much of the classroom information. And so it was fun. I mean, it was lots of fun. Way different than it is now. Because I was a student for so long, they built the classroom building. So before I finished with my bachelor's degree, I actually had classes in the classroom building, and the classroom building at that point was new and absolutely wonderful because it was, the seating was so that you could sit in the back and still see. And so I went from sitting on the floor in a hospital, old hospital room, to the classroom building. So it has been an interesting transition. And the School of Nursing, when I was there for the most part in the 80s, in the basement was where they did the labs and clinicals and our clinical training. Then on the main floor of that building was the hospital for the students, and they actually had a place that you can still see where it is on the side of that Cheney building, where the ambulances would bring students in, and they had students in that building, and then the instructors were in the upper floors.
So was it only nursing in that building?
Yes.
It was. So the Cheney building actually used to be
the School of Nursing.
So, and the School of Nursing owned the whole thing.
Well, I don't know who owned it, but they
the
certainly occupied the whole thing. And often, I believe that initially, although I never did a clinical rotation at the I guess clinic, the UW clinic. I know that other nurses before me did do that.
And was the clinic always where it is now? Or did you guys have that in the Cheney building as well?
No. When it became the Cheney building, then that area where the student health services was, I don't even know if they're still in that building.
They are in a building near the Cheney building and by the America building.
Oh, okay. So they've moved it. But that it used to all be one sort of big, happy medical family. But no pharmacy was there. They were somewhere else. And the health sciences, as we know it currently, they were not together. And that I love the fact that we are now health science and as opposed with just nursing. That's a good thing, an absolutely good thing.
Yes. During your time, how many students were in a class year?
You know,
and if you took 9 years, were you overlapping different class years?
Oh
then?
yeah, I have so many friends that I went to school with because I was Dot Tupper's longest single advisee, so I was in school a long time. And yes, and the curriculum changed and the instructors changed, and often a lot of things were unusual and different. When I was when I started my first med-surg clinical, the very first one I had was at Edmondson. But then very quickly we started using the hospitals. They had DePaul Hospital, and the Cheyenne Regional was called Cheyenne Memorial in those days.
Yes.
And so I worked in both of those hospitals, and I did my public health rotation in Cheyenne. And the interesting part about that is that when I went into nursing, my intent was to be maternal child health. And because the doctors I worked for were OBGYN doctors. So that was my intent. And while I was in school, I did my public health rotation and was the first honor, I guess, that came up was that I was nominated for the Gertrude Gould Public Health Nursing Award. And that reshaped my intent. And I then applied for and became, as my first job, a public health nurse when I got out of school.
But historically, public health nursing has been primarily associated with mother-baby.
It has.
So is that why the transition then from wanting to do maternity anyway and then into public health seemed maybe natural?
Well, I think part of it was that. The other piece that was significant was that as a public health nurse, there was no regular home health in Laramie, Wyoming at that point. The only home care that people got was for mom and baby, which I loved, but also we did what would be considered nowadays probably Medicare home health. And we would make visits to elderly people. And the first, what I remember about my first job at public health was that each of the nurses, we got a new position, and that became me. And each of the nurses gave me 4 or 5 clients out of their caseload because they were overwhelmed. And imagine that they gave me some of the most difficult and challenging patients. So during the first year that I worked as a public health nurse, of those patients, I think I had 11 that expired. They were ill and at the end and time consuming, and I was young and new and thought I could manage and did, but I suddenly understood the other end of the spectrum, which was geriatrics and end of life care. And so that's how I ended up finishing my career, because I worked both with hospice here in Laramie. I was involved with hospice when they very first started. I did the initial fundraising, went around to all the social service organizations in town and raised money so that we could start hospice in Laramie.
So when we talk about hospice in Laramie, we're talking about the hospice of Laramie.
Correct, and I have a picture that I will share with you that is of the ladies that were the beginning people. And then once we raised enough money, and believe me, it wasn't a lot of money. I can remember after maybe the first 6 months of fundraising, we had $80. So the organizations gave us money, and then we were eventually able to build on that and open an office. and do home care
Mhm.
that was end of life care.
Mhm.
So I was at the public health nursing office as a
Mhm.
public health care specialist for
Mhm.
4 years.
Mhm.
And then I met the first graduate from the nurse practitioner program at the School of Nursing, Maxine Chisholm.
Yes.
And she encouraged me, and I at the time thought was coercing me to apply for a job
Mhm.
as the director of nursing at the local nursing home, which was at that point in time called Bethesda Care Center.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
And so I went from being a public health care specialist
Mhm.
to the director of nursing of the local nursing home.
Okay.
And that then created my love for geriatrics.
Uh-huh.
And the things that I was doing worked well. And, you know, I know we're talking about the Wyoming Nurses Association, but one of the things that I want to tell you about is how we had the most wonderful opportunities at the nursing home to work with faculty at the university. And at that point in time,
Mhm.
there was a nurse, her name was Sharon Humanick, who was very, very involved with Sigma Theta Tau at that point in time. And she and I worked together and did a project that I ended up winning an award for,
Mhm.
presenting at Sigma Theta Tau in Denver
Mhm. Mhm.
at a meeting, and then actually got invited to present and publish that
Uh-huh.
that study after I presented in Hawaii.
Oh.
And so that started me
Nice.
out, and I was a baby nurse. I mean, this was within 5 years from when I graduated with my bachelor's in nursing.
So you went to school from 72 to 81.
Mm-hmm.
Graduated with a bachelor's of nursing
Mm-hmm.
from UW. And in 81, did they have the willow ceremony then?
No.
No. Did they have a pinning?
They had a pinning.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And did you have to recite the pledge? The
Yes.
Nightingale Pledge?
Yes, I
Okay.
did. And it was in the
Mhm.
Arts and Sciences building where it is today. I go to those because it's so meaningful to me, because I remember we had to wear white uniforms and were pinned, and our families came up on stage with us,
Mhm.
and they were, the pins were placed on us
Uh-huh.
with my husband and my 2 daughters standing beside me. So that's how pinning went in those days, and it was wonderful. And I still have my pin. I drag that out as well. People don't
wanna see
wear
that.
them as much as they used to,
No,
but
they don't.
but that was an important milestone at graduation. That happened very shortly. It wasn't quite the same as it is now.
Uh-huh.
We were pinned sort of later in the process. It didn't happen before you started, you know, your program
Mhm.
like they do
Mhm.
it more today.
Mhm.
And at that point in time, I do not believe that, you know, I'd have to look that up.
Mhm.
Here's a good question. I'm not sure if they even had a master's program at that point, let alone a doctoral program.
Yes.
So that was as high as we went.
Mhm.
But you know,
Mhm.
the faculty at the university were so pro helping the students that they helped me get articles published.
Mhm.
You know, I had an article that I wrote because of research that I did on Alzheimer's disease at the nursing home.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
Within the first year or 2 after I went to work. I worked at public health for 4 years,
Mhm.
then I went to the nursing home, and I worked there for another 4 years.
So we're talking 81 to about 85, 86, you were in public health here in Laramie.
Correct.
And then you were made the offer at the nursing home, so that was about 86-ish.
Mm-hmm.
You went to go be the director there.
Correct.
And how long were you there?
I was there another 4 years.
So till 1990.
Late 89.
Okay.
Early 90.
And so during that time period, you were still collaborating with the folks in the nursing program at UW.
Absolutely.
And they were very active with you, and were they sending students to do clinical at your...
Yes. We had students, and they were very, very interested in successful practice by the nurses that were graduates, and worked very hard to, a couple of things about the end of my nursing career and how I got started in WNA and ANA and Sigma and Sigma Theta Tau and those kinds of things. I remember we had a class called the Dean's Class, and the instructor that I had for that class was a nurse faculty. Her name was Beverly McDermott.
Yes.
And Beverly, I can remember her talking to the class, and she said that we didn't have, it was an obligation to join the American Nurses Association and the Wyoming Nurses Association, that it wasn't an option, that it was important to do it, and you just did it.
Yes.
And so when I graduated from school, as soon as I got my license, I paid my dues and became a WNA member. I very quickly, actually while I was still a student, I became a Sigma member. And I can remember, the other day I was looking through some stuff and I found the letter that I wrote to become a Sigma Theta Tau member when I was in school. And what I wrote in that letter was that I was really good at fundraising because I had done some other fundraising for some other organizations. And so that's what, because I was so not aware of what Sigma and Sigma Theta Tau stood for, I thought, well, I know how I can get into this organization. I'll become the fundraiser. So that's how I got started on my fundraising nursing career. So, but then those nursing instructors, because I was local, which was positive, and because at that point in time the university had a real surge of making sure that people were doing research and being involved in research, and the instructors started with hands-on. And that's how, and I was so fortunate to be in that moment. And so, like I say, I had articles published, and I was just amazed. Travel opportunities and organizations that I was able to be involved with that were just amazing for me. They shaped my career. Absolutely.
Do you attribute a lot of this then to being in a small town, in a small community with a smaller nursing program, where you had maybe a more community, personal relationship with the faculty? Or was this just because also, I mean, the 80s and 90s for nursing were an amazing time.
Exactly.
Very exciting.
I think it was a little both. I believe that the School of Nursing at the University of Wyoming has always been there to serve the nurses that they educated. And I believe that it was serendipitous. I had a wonderful opportunity because of the times. I had a wonderful opportunity because I was not a generic student. I was an older student. I am sure that working together with those faculty was helpful to them because I was not so busy learning how to be a nurse anymore. I had that. So I was learning how to be a leader. That's what I think. And it was just the time was right, and what a lucky nurse I was.
So in your nursing class, how many people were in your class?
We had about the same as we do now. Around 30 to 40 nurses.
Okay.
The class size has not increased a lot in that time. We've talked about doing a lot more, but you know, there have been all sorts of things that have come up, including, you know, lack of faculty, lack of financial support from the legislature, lots of different things that I also was lucky enough to participate in. But it has created a situation where the school didn't grow. Maybe 40 to 45 nurses in that class is the right size for the state of Wyoming. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
And so, were you the only student in your class that had, we call it previous life experience, because you didn't have to learn how to take care of a baby, right? You already knew. Were you the only one in your class?
No.
So there was a mix then. There was very young people just starting off with
There weren't a lot of us.
And then there was this group. Do you know any of the other names of people in your class?
You know, my very best friend and colleague, because she and I had similar life experiences, was Dee Gilson, who lives up in Sheridan.
Okay.
And Dee and I had lots of clinicals together, and we had fun doing our nursing because we weren't so frightened that we were going to hurt somebody. We knew we could manage to take care of our patients. And I can remember some so funny experiences. One of them was that we had an instructor, and I can't even remember her name, God bless her, but the first clinical rotation we had up at Ivinson, we had a gentleman who'd had surgery on his genitalia, and he was elderly, and they had removed his genitalia, and he subsequently, on our second day of clinical, expired. And the instructor was very concerned about Dee and I because we'd lost a patient on our second clinical day. And how did she gathered us up, the two of us, and was going to help us manage this horrible experience. Well, Dee had been a Corps medic in the Navy, so she had a long history as well. And the two of us were just stunned at this instructor, thinking that we should be emotionally upset because this gentleman, first of all, was extremely older and extremely debilitated, and you know, we thought that it was a blessing that this gentleman had passed, and we were not profoundly affected by his passing, nor did we feel any responsibility for that because we had experience. So that was amusing to us, and I can remember after it was over that the instructor struggled way more than we did with that experience because she was young and she was going to be the psych instructor for the university. So she was relatively new, but we managed to do that. But we always had a good time. Dee and I did. I remember us working in the hospital in Cheyenne, and we had a disgruntled cleaning person who had, for whatever reason, had some sort of difficulty with someone and was kind of acting out, I'd say, and kind of slamming things around, and how we were just so amused because we could see how frustrated she was with whatever had happened. Again, we were totally uninvolved, just observers, and were able to see that and understand how difficult it was for people that were ancillary staff to help with nursing. I mean, the education that we got, because were non-generic, because we were experienced a little, really did allow us to we both became managers because of, because we learned how to manage that kind of stuff and did it when we were in that phase of learning where we could see people
Yes.
struggling
Yes.
with, I can remember often hearing something about, well, nurses are all that matter, ancillary staff don't matter, and those kinds of comments from
Yeah.
people that worked in dietary or cleaning or
Yes.
whatever, and how that affected
Mhm.
how we practice nursing as adult nurse.
Mhm. Yeah.